Northwest Cavalryman Show, the podcast where your host, Rick Skolrud, discusses politics and news from Canada, the United States, and around the world from a conservative perspective. Warning: professionally offended people and liberal crybabies may be triggered. Viewer discretion is advised. While we put the finishing touches on this podcast, you are invited to visit the show notes. There are links to all of Rick's social media, including his website where you can sign up to take the Canadian Firearms Safety Course, which is a prerequisite for obtaining your Canadian Firearms License, also known as a PAL. Rick teaches these courses in Maple Bay, just east of Duncan on Vancouver Island, British Columbia. Now here's your host, Rick Skolrud.
Hello everybody, how are you doing tonight? I hope I'm broadcasting, going live. If anybody can just give me a bit of a sound check as usual, that would be great. Hello, Moist Noodler, are you still there? See you checked in around 5:25, so that was quite a while ago. Hello, Inez. I know, I'm just terrible with names. So, how's everybody doing tonight? I hope everybody is doing great. So it's been kind of a crazy week, hasn't it? We've had all sorts of things happen that we didn't think would happen in the last week and a half, almost 2 weeks now, I guess, coming up to 2 weeks. Yeah, so a lot of things happened. And then, hello, Grumpy Bear. We had our Prime Minister go down and get, I think, kind of humiliated in front of the U.S. President. Hello, Harley. Thank you for checking that out. And the reason why I say he was humiliated is because of something that came up today. Hello, Carl. It basically, and I don't have a clip of that because it just kind of came through. Hello, David. But I wanted to play a few clips here. Matter of fact, I got so many clips. Probably have way too many clips for tonight, so probably won't get through all of them. But then again, every time I think that I have too much, I end up going through it fairly quickly. And then when I figure I don't have enough, I end up, being fairly long. So there you go. Hello, David. So let's start with this one, and then we'll talk about it, because I think it's very, very telling what Donald Trump said after the interview with Mark's Carnage Carney.
Well, thank you. Doing great. We were being ripped off by every country in the world virtually, and now we're not being ripped off anymore. It's very simple, very, very simple. As far as calling him Governor Carney, no, I haven't done that yet, and maybe I won't. I did have a lot of fun with Trudeau, but I think this is a big step up. It's a good step up for Canada. I watched very closely. I thought he did really terrifically in the debates. I like him. He's a nice man. We get along very well. We had a great meeting today. Really good. I think the relationship's going to be very strong. Thank you. They're doing great.
Wow. Hello, Roger. How are you doing tonight? So I thought that was very telling. You see, the left has been focused on all of these trolls since Donald Trump started these trolls way back in November, and that's all they've been. Hello, Digger. And that's really all they've been. They've not been anything else other than trolls. And us on the right side of the spectrum, the political spectrum, have realized they were trolls. We kind of went along with it. We kind of made fun of it. We kind of, needled people a little bit. But today, Trump let it out of the bag. Or not, maybe not today, maybe it was yesterday, whenever he made that clip. You see what he said there? I had fun with Trudeau, and I haven't yet started calling Mark Carney Governor Carney. See, it was all a joke. Even if he was serious about absorbing Canada into the United States, it would have been more of like a merger. There wouldn't have just been one state. And we've talked about this a number of times on the channel. So I think we can finally put it to bed. Yeah, he's probably going to he's probably going to resurrect that, but it's never going to happen. And but even the left, after seeing that, they still think it's real. David Cochrane was asking Melanie Joly about how she thought it, or he thought it was real, still today in an interview that she did. So obviously the left just isn't getting it. Hello, Parabellum. Hello, Tracy. Hello, Colleen McFarland. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. So obviously we should be able to put that to bed. It's not going anywhere though, because the left is still going to focus on it, and that's what Trump wants. He wants people to freak out about what he says. So I really think that that he proved today it was nothing more than a troll, and he was having fun with it. And he actually got quite a kick out of running Justin out of office. He did. That was to a large part his doing, and he got quite a kick out of installing or help installing Mark Carney, because of course Mark Carney is a pushover, and he's going to be easy to control. Hello, Brad. Thank you very much. Hello, Pearls and Mama from Steinbeck. How are you? So I think we can put that one to bed. But getting back to the CBC, because, and I know a lot of people here don't like the CBC, but for years I just totally ignored them. But it is, they do have some things. Well, they put stuff all the time that we really have to talk about. And one thing in particular is their choice in political analysts. It's just so ridiculous. I'm going to play you this one clip before I comment on it, because it really is hilarious. And you wonder, where do they find these idiots? Seriously, where do they find these idiots? Maybe they've been around broadcasting and politics for decades, but they should just get rid of them because they're completely useless. Have a listen to what this idiot has to say.
The president of the United States is a crown fetishist and loves the British monarchy, and that's why it's also very good for Canada that our head of state, King Charles III, will be here delivering a throne speech, because King Charles is going to deliver a throne speech that's going to say things like Canada will never be a 51st state. We've got to remove these tariffs. They're bad for the economy of Canada. They're bad for the economy of the United States. And Mr. Trump is going to say, hey, wait a minute, that's the king speaking. And he's not going to realize that it's the government's speech through the king. He's going to think that that's King Charles's comments directly. And I think Mr. Trump will listen to that. I really do. I mean, the fact that he said he had watched the debate, I thought that was incredible, to think that on Thursday before Good Friday, there was the president watching the Canadian election debate. Presumably he only watched the English one.
Yeah, but Rob, there was...
Now, I don't know what kind of an idiot is this. Of course, Trump knows that the king is reading a pre-prepared statement, speech. Of course, he knows that. He's not going to freak out about this. It is complete lunacy that this guy is even a political commentator. Trump knows what happens up here. He's not a dummy. Like, these liberals think that Trump is a dummy, and calling him a crown fetish person, or whatever he said, however he pronounced that, saying that he has a crown fetish, that I think is just insulting. And of course, you're going to get Trump pushing back on these people when they insult him like that. That's just ridiculous. Hello, Nelson from New Brunswick. Hello, Chris Newton. The king is a sick bugger. Yeah, I'm not, I've said it before. I don't mind. I didn't mind Queen Elizabeth just because I thought she was a good person. But, yeah, Chuckles the Clown I'm not too crazy about. So... Yeah, this is the type of people that they have as commentators. I'm not going to subject you to any more commentators tonight. I will go to a few CBC clips later on. But I tell you what, it's just ridiculous what they try to pass off as news or pass off as political commentary. It's just completely stupid. The next thing up that I wanted to talk about is Pierre, because they keep on harping on this. The Conservatives should get rid of Pierre because he lost his riding. They make a big deal about him losing his riding. We all know what happened there. It wasn't because of anything he did or anything he didn't do. It was because of a number of factors, some dirty, underhanded factors, and some factors that were just not in anybody's control. Or at least we don't know, or we don't think that it was in anybody's control. One factor was that they changed the boundaries of Carleton to include what was a neighboring one. I don't know. I can't think off the top of my head what the neighboring what the neighboring community was, but that was a big deal. The other thing was, in the last couple of years, ever since the last election, well, Trudeau has increased the public service by 40% or 50%, something like that, some incredibly stupid number. And of course, they need to live someplace, so they're living in that area close to Capitol Hill. A lot of them moving into that area. And of course, if you work for the Canadian government in the public service in Ottawa, chances are you're left-leaning. That's been the fact forever. And when they hear that Pierre Poilievre is going to cut the public service, of course, they don't like that. Of course, he's not going to be firing anybody, and everybody knows he's not going to be firing anybody. He said that he's going to do it through attrition, but everybody seems to ignore that. Matter of fact, they seem to ignore a lot of things he says. All of the people who voted against him for certain issues, like women's issues, they didn't have to vote against him. Even if they were a single issue voter, and that was the issue that was driving their vote, they had nothing to worry about with Pierre. They could have voted for the economy and for a healthy country, but no, single issue voters voted against him because they were misled by the media and by all the lies from the left. There should actually be a law, when you mislead somebody during an election like that, that you get called, that you get charged. I think, if you're a politician and you mislead somebody, especially during an election, or you're lying about your opponent, that should be a criminal offense, in my opinion. Hello, Tony. How you doing tonight? So anyway, so Tony, if things work out, Alberta will be able to see Ottawa in our rearview mirror. Well, it's if you have some serious magnification on it, yes. But obviously that's a reference to separation. That'll be a long time coming if it comes at all. Hello, Lynn. How you doing tonight? President Trump walk in front of the Queen demon as the day. President Trump let them know the game was up. Okay, so I want to play this next clip. It was a long lead up to it, but here it goes.
Mr. Poilievre, you said you wanted to learn and grow. What have you learned from this election, and how will you grow?
Well, what we learned, I think we all learned, is that the map has changed dramatically. Like, if you had told me that, for one, that we would get 41% of the vote a couple years ago, I would have said, wow, that's ambitious. But if you told me that we would get 41% of the vote and still not win, I would have said, you're crazy. But in fact, our electoral map has changed. It's at this point, right now, it could change again, but right now it's looking more and more like a two-party map, where getting 41%, by the way, the best result that we've had since 1988, is not enough, was not enough to form government. So we have to ask ourselves, how do we, first of all, keep the enormous number of the 8 million people who voted for us that was just almost 2.5 million more than the previous time. But then add another roughly 1 million votes that will allow us to get over the finish line. And that's something we're going to be talking with. We have to spend a lot of the summer listening carefully to people in the communities, coffee shops and town halls and other events. We can find out who are the people that are most likely to join this growing movement and get us over the finish line. So
all right. So some of the silly questions that they ask, hello, just me, and hello, Daniel Boone. How's it going down in the Alamo? And Lucy, how are you tonight? So they're asking him, what has he learned? Well, by most metrics, they did really well. If it wasn't for the fact that there was a total collapse of the NDP, they would be quite possibly the majority government. Just the way our system works. The thing is if 49% of all the seats went Conservative with 100% of the voters, but the 51% of the seats went to the Liberals with only 50% or 51% of the voters, well, guess what? The Liberals, are still in the lead, even though they don't have as many voters. So there's that, right? Election reform. I'm going to talk about a little bit of election reform later if we get to it. As I said, I do have a lot of things on my board here. A lot of things I figured I'd talk about. A lot of clips too. I found a way to put clips together a lot faster. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I hope that it doesn't ruin your experience here. But yeah, I found a way to get some clips faster than because of the editing process. The editing process is quite time consuming. Let's just put it that way. But I found a way to do it a little bit faster. So I do think that those questions are always a little bit silly. Of course, I think they have to fill up time. Obviously, they're filling time up on their broadcasts, and they have to justify their job essentially. But what did he learn? Well, he learned that you know what? Andrew Scheer put it better. And of course, Andrew Scheer is now the interim leader of the party, because you have to have one for a lot of administrative purposes when your leader is not a member of Parliament. So Andrew Scheer is now back as the interim leader of the party, and he said it best. But now, before we get to exactly what he said, I want to play this, and then we'll comment on it. So I'm going to insert something kind of out of sequence from what I just spoke about, but I think this is I think it's not only is it funny, but it does show you that CBC is well, let's just play it and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, thanks very much. First of all, I do just want to correct something you said on the air last time I was on your show. You said the government did not permanently increase the money supply. Mm-hmm. They absolutely did. The money supply is over $700 billion on M2, higher today than it was during the pandemic, and the settlement balances are still significantly higher than pre-lockdown periods. So I just want to put that on the table.
Okay, the Bank of Canada did that, to be clear.
Well, they were buying government bonds because of deficit spending. But anyway, what we're describing.
Oh, why do I think that's funny? Well, I think that's funny. Andrew Scheer, of course, he always seems like he's having a good time. He's got that permanent smile on his face. But he always seems like he's having a good time. And hello, Pat Man. Yeah, why do I think that's funny? Well, I think that's funny because after Andrew signed off on his last appearance, David Cochrane made a few comments. But clearly David Cochrane is wrong. So when Andrew Scheer came on now, he corrected him. And I think that David Cochrane, he knew he had been done. He was probably corrected by the station, by CBC. And they probably told him, look, you messed up. what you said was not correct, so you probably should let it go. They never correct themselves. CBC is the only station, I don't know if you know this, but CBC is the only station in Canada, or the only network in Canada, that doesn't have to comply with the broadcast standards, because they say they have their own ombudsman or something like that. So think about that for a minute. They can downright lie to us and be biased in their news, and they don't play by the same rules. They can say they were investigating it themselves, find themselves not guilty of anything, and there you have it. Of course, we all have, we've all said, well, the police shouldn't investigate themselves and whatnot. And of course, there's a lot to be said that they shouldn't. But what about the CBC? What about these other organizations, these government organizations, government-paid organizations who just investigate themselves? Doesn't sound very good to me. And of course, I think that they told Cochrane, look, you are wrong. Don't put up a big deal if he brings it up again, because you were just wrong. It is clear that Andrew Scheer was right. So, getting back on track about analyzing the election, Andrew Scheer actually did a very good job of analyzing it, and he explained it even better than Pierre did, I think. So take a look at this, and then we'll carry on.
So more refinement than wholesale revolution.
Well, I think anytime you go from 34 to 42, anytime you win seats in historic levels, win votes that have never been historically associated with our party. I'll tell you, in 2015, when we were going through our election results after the loss in 2015, we were told that the three big groups that Conservatives had to figure out with were new Canadians, young people, and unionized workers, people who work in unionized trades. Those three groups came our way big time. So there's a lot to be optimistic about, and making those refinements, making those changes, I believe are what's necessary. And again, doing that in a data-driven way, really taking the time to go through the results, not 1 week after the election suddenly deciding that person is responsible for this, or this is what caused this. I mean, we want to do this in a thoughtful way. We owe it to our members to get this right. We owe it to our voters to get this right, and that's what we're going to do.
So the issues.
Now, I think that he's got some more analysis coming up. But so they focused on some groups that they were told to focus on, that they thought that they should focus on, and they got those votes. It just wasn't enough. The boomers, for whatever reason, decided to go another route. And there was lots of people in other groups. What really surprised me was the throughout the election, throughout the process, even leading up to the election, was how negative the and I don't want to say all women, because obviously it's not all women. Hello, Kathy. Because it's not. There's a lot of women who are conservatives who know better, but there was a lot of women who fell for all of the lies that the mainstream media and the politicians were spreading, and they hated Pierre. They thought he came off as arrogant, and that he was going to abuse their women's rights. So, that's why I said before, there should actually be election laws, or more strict laws for politicians. You shouldn't be able to lie about your opponent to gain votes. That's dirty pool. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's, freedom of speech, but lies are not freedom of speech, and slander is not freedom of speech. So when Jagmeet Singh says that Pierre is going to cancel all of the programs that he forced, and he says he forced, the Liberals to bring in, those are lies. Pierre said he wouldn't. When, when everybody was talking about how Pierre Poilievre was going to bring back abortion laws, that's a lie. The party has said they're not going to ever entertain that line of legislation again. So that's a lie. And people fall for this. They just lie. And then we've got results like this. Plus the boundary changes and the PPC. Now, I know I do have some PPC followers here, but let's face it, I saw a number of ridings. I watched that, and many of you were on the stream when I was watching the election results. And how many noticed that there were some ridings where the PPC, there was so close, and the PPC had enough votes, had they not had a candidate, that riding obviously would have went to Pierre. Now, I know that happens all the time on the left as well. Obviously, we saw it because the NDP wasn't around, and they didn't do very well, and the Liberals got their vote. Also, the Green Party, Dizzy Lizzy, she ended up not running certain candidates in certain ridings in order to benefit the Liberals. So it's a big game with these people on the left. I don't get it myself why anybody would put up with that, but they do. Hello, Rennie, and hello, MK Archives. How are y'all doing tonight? So that was a bit of an analysis. They got those three groups of people. I think there was three off the top of my head. And yeah, maybe there's more work to be done. I think that Pierre will probably do well if he focuses on letting people know who he really is, a family guy who respects his family, his wife, and I think he'll do a lot better. But just getting that message out, it's difficult for conservatives to get their message out. In the U.S., and it is the same in Canada, I don't think it's as bad, but whenever there is a Republican in the White House, they get between 85 to 95% negative coverage, where Democrats only get around, they usually get less than 50% negative coverage. They usually get around 65% positive coverage. So, and that's been the standard ever since I've been following politics. My favorite president was Ronald Reagan. I just thought that guy was great. And he got negative coverage, just because he was a Republican. When he didn't get that negative coverage when he was a Democrat, because he had been a Democrat before that. So, consider that. Let's go to another clip of Andrew, because he does do a little bit more analysis here. Not that much, but a little bit more. And he also confirms what a lot of people have been asking about the about the Conservative Party. So we'll talk about that.
Clearly, counting on the NDP to take 10 to 20% of the vote might not be part of the decision-making going forward. What we aren't going to do is we're not going to listen to people who don't want our party to win to diagnose the problem. We want to meet with candidates who fought. We want to meet with volunteers who are at doors all across the country. We want to hear from them. And we're in the early days of compiling all of that feedback, while at the same time recognizing that to go from 34% to 42%, to increase seat counts by over 20 seats and picking up these seats in historic places is a great base to build from. So we don't want to lose anything that we've built, and that's part of the team coming behind Pierre yesterday that we saw, is that everyone believes that Pierre is the guy that can get those missing 3, 4, 5% to put us over the top next time.
What was his message?
So at the end there, he did his analysis, but then he got to the point where everybody is still behind Pierre. So I think that hopefully will shut down all of this nonsense where they want Pierre to resign, because over the past week and a half, all you've heard from the mainstream media is, but you lost your seat, shouldn't you resign? Pierre lost his seat, shouldn't he resign? No, he did very well. all things considered. Again, it was a matter of not being very well represented in the mainstream media and whatnot. So I don't think that he should resign. What do you guys think? I think that he did all right, and he should. And I'm kind of torn with him running in a by-election. That the guy from Battle River Crowfoot. I know I made a mistake and I said Battleford Crowfoot once in one of my videos, and I didn't catch it in the editing process. I know what it is. It's Battle River Crowfoot, but I kind of feel bad that the guy there gave up his seat. He had been a one-term MP, won his second term. It would have been good for him to carry on and rise up in the ranks, but he gave up his seat, fell on his sword. I think that maybe somebody else should have done that. Maybe somebody who had been around for a little bit longer, maybe who was looking forward to retirement. To me that would have been better. But what do I know? I'm just an observer, really, and a commentator. But it's a very safe seat. So there you have it. And he's back in Alberta. And I think he should stay in Alberta. I don't think he should try to get a seat in Ottawa. I saw some comments today that some people think that he should run again in Ontario. But he's an Alberta guy. He's an Alberta born and bred guy. So why not stay in Alberta? Why not reestablish himself in Alberta? You never know. He may be the first president of Western Canada. You never know about that, right? Hello, John. How are you today? Hello, Canada Unchained. Yes, I'm not sure I agree with you, Canada Unchained, but welcome to the stream. Because yeah. Hello, Kraken. How are you? And our favorite lady from Florida is with us tonight. I don't think I have too many people from Florida. So hello, Jessica. How are you doing? So I got to thinking about this, and I was thinking about doing a dedicated video to it, but I figured it would probably be just best to talk about it on the stream here. Hello, Lynn. I don't think I said hello to you. Yeah, I think you came on when I was doing some stuff, Lynn. Hello. Election reform. Because a lot of us really question some of the things that went on. Some of the things that went on, there may not have been any shenanigans. I'm not saying positively that there was. Hello, Alberta 51. I'm saying that there were some shenanigans for sure. There's some in all elections, some of which is criminal and some of which is not criminal, like the putting of the buttons to try and convince people that the Conservative Party is so far left or so far right that they shouldn't be trusted. Hello, Richard. Welcome to the stream. So how do we trust the count? First, I think that there should be no count or no release of any counts until all of the polls close across the country. And there's a very good reason for that. It's not just that, I think we should do that because it does possibly convince people not to bother out here in BC and in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Now, Alberta and Saskatchewan, doesn't really matter. They're going to vote Conservative anyway for the last, for however long I've known, I've been paying attention, especially Alberta, it's going to go Conservative. But when you get to BC and when you get to places like, the bigger centers, how many people were discouraged from voting if they were voting later in the evening. They just got home from work. They saw that the polls in Ontario were all favoring the Liberals, and that CTV and CBC had already called the election for the Liberals. First off, I think that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. They shouldn't do that. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. They shouldn't be allowed to make those predictions or call it. They're media. They should wait until Elections Canada comes out with an official winner. Okay, first. Second, there should be no vote counting until, or the publication of any vote counting until after all the polls close. So you might say, well, that's going to take until midnight. Actually, it doesn't have to. Here's the thing. I believe that there should be only, or that the official count should only be counted by hand, paper ballots. I absolutely believe that. But I don't think that it needs to be done on the night of the election. Because if you take a second count, an electronic count, a second electronic count, then you can have the results immediately. Now, I know people say, well, they don't trust those machines. But the one good thing about that is you can compare the two results and then find out if there's been some funny business between the two results. So that's one thing. And if it's not the official count, if it's the unofficial count, and we might have to wait for a week to get the official count, or at least 3 or 4 days. That might be a good idea. I also think that there has to be video evidence of each ballot being counted. It's that would not be difficult to do. You set up a camera above the shoulder, right behind the people, the person counting the ballot, the person recording the ballot. You have that there. You have that recorded, and that's a record. So and then you don't have people trying to rush things, because some of the scrutineers were saying that they were being shut down because they didn't have enough scrutineers to scrutinize all the boxes being counted, because they were counting multiple boxes at the same time. And they brought that up, and they were just kind of shut down because the Elections Canada people wanted to go home. They were tired. Okay, well, why not have these boxes secured and do a proper shift the next few days? And I do believe that the Canadian Armed Forces should be the ones securing those boxes, or something like that, or some. I don't think that Elections Canada, that we should necessarily trust a civilian agency who is obviously kind of pro-liberal, running or having custody of these boxes. Yeah, they run the election. That's fine. But who has custody of these boxes? They've just found a number of boxes. I don't know how many actual votes were in there. It looked like there was like a little less than 900 votes in it, but they found a bunch of boxes in Port Coquitlam, or Coquitlam, one of the two, in BC, that weren't counted on election night. They were the special ballots. So they were the out-of-riding ballots. So the ones that you do have to write your name on and seal it in an envelope, and then seal it in another envelope. And then it goes to wherever. They weren't counted. Now, 800 and some ballots, probably not going to make any difference whatsoever. Matter of fact, Elections Canada said it won't. But you kind of get the idea. They don't seem to have very good continuity of their, it's not evidence, but continuity of their votes. They don't have very good continuity. So how do you resolve that? Well, maybe you bring in the armed forces. I don't suggest you bring in the police, because they're just too busy doing other things. But that's one way to do it. but they should have better control over the boxes, obviously. So what else should they do? Well, a couple of things. First off, we get so many reports, or there are so many reports of people complaining to the police that there's been some fraud. Like they show up at an election station, they try to sign in, and they've been told they've already voted before, but they haven't. Then they have to sign a declaration that that they haven't. They're warned that if they lie, they could be prosecuted, yada, yada, yada. Well, each of those instances should be investigated. The police don't have the ability. There's just too many of them, right? Well, this is where I think that they should stand up a force of maybe retired police officers, have a few people from have a few regular members who are current police officers coordinate the effort, but they should stand up a whole bunch of police officers on an on-call basis, like retired police officers, who will go out and look into these things, because it's not that difficult to look into, really. If you think about it, there's certain things you need to do. You need to take statements, and then you need to, and if it was monitored correctly, you could see if somebody had given a special ballot or a mail-in ballot out that they shouldn't have. And where did that vote come from? How did that name get checked off the list? If all of that had been on video, you could track that down. With AI today, you could actually do a reverse search of that and track down a lot of that stuff if the images are clear enough. So maybe we should look into that. I don't think the regular police should do it because they're just too busy. But if you know that it's every 4 years, stand up a force of retired police officers who are willing to work for a few months or on a on-call basis, get a few bucks in their retirement. They know how to do investigations. They know how to document investigations. It's kind of a no-brainer. But, a lot of people don't want the truth to come out after elections. So there's that. So those are kind of my ideas about election reform. Not necessarily not necessarily reforming how people vote or how the votes are counted. I know there's a lot of talk about representative voting. So if 50% of the votes go to one party, then they have 50% of the candidates, and then 49 to the other, whatever. Problem I have with that is you don't necessarily know who your candidate in your riding is. And some people like to know that. A lot of people, it doesn't matter, they're voting for the party. But there are a lot of people who actually want to know their representative in Ottawa. But if you don't know that person, if you're just voting for the party, and then the party is assigning that person, how do you know that the person being assigned is good for your riding? So I don't know that I'm 100% in agreement with representative, or what I'm talking about, like the percentages. I'm not sure how to fix that, but after the fact, investigating the complaints and also auditing. There should also be an audit of every election scheduled afterwards, where they go and they count all the, there's a second count by auditors, and again, use the same kind of system, the two tally system, where the official tally is going to be by hand, but the unofficial tally is going to be by machine. Match it up, make it work. Hello, Kathy. Hello, Wilford. Hello, Bonnie. Just going back here, see if I missed anybody. Northern Redacted, how are you? Dane, how are you? Marianne, how are you? I think I got everybody, or said hello to everybody. So what else do I have? Well, I've got some clips. I've got a lot of clips. I got a couple from Melanie Joly, kind of debating whether I should play them, but she is still a member of the government, and yeah, might as well just play them and talk about them. So here's the first one.
And what we know also is President Trump will be coming to Kananaskis in Alberta in June for the G7. So basically, the question of Canada's sovereignty is not on the table. And second, what is on the table is how can we handle a trade relationship at the time of a trade war? How can we handle a security relationship with the U.S. at a time where the U.S. has decided to not play the same role around the world, and therefore there's way much more instability in the world? And what are Canada's interests, and how can we protect jobs at home? How can prices go down? How can families be reassured? And how can ultimately we be strengthened as a country? And this is the mandate that Canadians gave us, and this is exactly the job.
Well, I can answer all those questions, Miss Joly. Yeah, have the Liberals resign. Have the Conservatives put in power. If you want a good economy, if you want all those things done, people should have voted for the Conservatives, because you keep on voting the same people in, you keep on getting the same results. And she says that they're a new government. They're not a new government. They've been around for 10 years. Hardly any of the faces have changed. Only Mark Carney really has changed. That's it. So what is she talking about here? That, they have a mandate. They have a mandate to maybe stop cheating. They have a mandate to actually maybe start listening to Canadians, start getting things done. So they want to bring down the prices of things. Well, stop doing what you've been doing. Stop printing money. You want to make, you want to reduce crime? Well, reduce crime. Reverse all of your policies. That's, it makes a lot of sense there. So I don't believe her for one bit that that things are going to change, obviously. She started off that clip with saying how, sovereignty is not on the table. Well, here's the thing. We talked about that. She should know better. But again, she's a bit of an airhead. That Donald Trump was just joking about all of that stuff. Now, of course, the Alberta separation, that's a different story. And Saskatchewan separation, that's a different story. It may come to fruition. You never know. But, some other country taking us over is not going to happen. It was never in the cards. So she does go on to talk about her government's approach.
That would be long-lasting. So that's why we want to have much more holistic approach. And at the same time, what we want to do is to make sure that we keep our doors open to new opportunities that we can have with Europe and with Asia that will help us make sure that we cut that over dependency. So that's our approach. Of course, we're a new government. Of course, not all ministers have been, the new cabinet has not been appointed. And of course, we know that being the biggest client of the U.S., we can show the world how to approach the U.S. So it's a big agenda. There's a lot of ambition, but at the same time, I think we have the right prime minister and the right team to handle it.
Okay, the president.
Okay, so that's the biggest joke. She's saying that they can show the world how to handle the U.S. or how to deal with the U.S. Well, that's funny because the U.K. just got the best deal out of all of the countries around the world. And Canada and China are still the countries that Donald Trump is targeting. And we're the ones that have been speaking up against him. We're the ones that haven't been going to the negotiating table as much as we should have. Yes, they've been down there a lot, but they just haven't been effective. And Donald Trump is playing the cards that he has, and he's the dealer. You know, he knows what's happening here, and he's a good player. And he also realizes our trade with the U.S. is a lot more significant than the U.K. But if she thinks that the world is going to come looking at how we deal with the Americans, well, that doesn't really bode well when a lot of places in the world are getting deals. They're getting all of this settled. Maybe not 100% to their liking, but they're getting some benefit out of negotiating with the U.S. And we're not getting the benefit that we think we should. We're nowhere near it. So the UK, he has this big announcement about all of these deals he's making with the UK, and Miss Jolie here thinks that the world's going to come looking to us for advice on how to deal with the Americans. I don't think so, Melanie. I don't think so. The world is getting it done without us. And why would they listen to us when Trump, he knows he has us over a barrel? That's it. So I think I want to just change gears here a little bit. We're going to talk more about domestic stuff right now. In particular, really this goes a lot to Alberta. But to get to Alberta, we're going to go through Ontario. We're going to go through Big Dougie Ford and listen to a few things he has to say, because I found it kind of interesting that he's now taking this route, a route that he's not taken before.
Conversation for the most part.
Are you hopeful that you can diffuse the Alberta secession movement with this kind of talk? I mean, I don't know if there's any talk about Premier Smith's potential referendum.
Well, I just always say, united we stand, divided we fall, and that was my message today. And let's continue making sure that we unite the country, not divide the country. And I spoke pretty strongly in support of Alberta and Saskatchewan. Because they've been ignored for the last 10 years. They've been treated terribly, to be very frank. And I think the new Prime Minister Carney, understands that. And he's going to be out there having great conversations. And just that one move, bringing FMM out to Saskatchewan, that's a big move. So everyone congratulated him on how he performed.
I'm not sure everybody congratulated Carney on that. I think that's a bunch of BS. But hey, look, Big Dougie Ford, I'm not sure why this idiot reporter is asking you about diffusing a situation that's happening in Alberta. You know what? I'm not in Alberta anymore. Used to live there for quite a while, but the West doesn't need Ontario, the Premier of Ontario, telling it what it should do or trying to diffuse the situation. The Premier of Ontario, like it or not, the government in Ontario, the Ontario provincial government, is a huge part of the problem. That's going to come up a little bit later in some of Danielle Smith's comments. But, Alberta doesn't need to hear, yes, it was good that he recognized that Alberta and Saskatchewan have been treated poorly. That's great, but he's not the person that should be called upon to rectify this situation. This is in the hands of the electorate, in the hands of the citizens of Alberta and the citizens of Saskatchewan, and hopefully the citizens of BC. In terms of a referendum, hopefully this will be in their hands within the next few years. It's nothing to do with Big Dougie Ford there. He's going to get his grubby little hands into it, and he's going to mess things up. And he's got no place. He has no standing in it. This is between Alberta, the people of Alberta, the government of Alberta, and the federal government. And that's going to come up a little bit later. Now, he does have One other thing to say, which I half support, or I support a little bit of it. So let's take a look at that.
Big believer of getting rid of C-69, and we need to unite this country. And the way we're going to unite this country, as I mentioned to the Prime Minister in front of the premiers, show some love to the people of Alberta and Saskatchewan. And let's start diversifying our trade when it comes to oil. Let's start building pipelines west, east, north, and yes, south as well. But they're getting a discount, by the way. We ship them $100 million worth of oil. They turn it into $300 million and ship it out. I think the number, we're giving them a discount of 20%. Well, let's start shipping it out, because we know, and I've mentioned that to the U.S. ambassador today, that if you take oil off the trade, they have a $50 billion surplus with Canada. And I encourage them, let's start moving forward. Let's sign a deal.
Okay, so he's talking there as if this is something new, as if he knew this, and he's bringing it up to the Prime Minister and to all the American ambassador. This has been brought up for months. We've known this ever since Trump started talking about tariffs and talking about the imbalance, which is more than just economic. I think he's talking about not just trade imbalance. I think he's talking about military imbalance and everything. And I think he's actually just grabbed that number out of thin air, to be honest. I don't think it's backed in reality, but who knows? Maybe it is. But it's something that a lot of us don't see. So we would have to hear from Donald Trump exactly what he's basing those numbers on. I don't think he's actually offered it. But Big Dougie Ford here, he's not bringing anything up that we haven't already heard. Danielle Smith has been talking about this for a very long time. Yes, if you take oil and gas out of the equation, as far as the economic trade imbalance, well, they have the surplus. They don't have a deficit. They have the surplus. So there's that. And they need our oil. He says, Trump, of course, says they don't need our oil, but they do need our oil. If they don't get it, it takes a while to start producing oil wells and drilling and whatnot. So, yeah, what are they going to do in the next 5 years while they're putting in all of these oil fields to replace our oil? Well, they need our oil. Yes, we need pipelines. Is Big Dougie Ford just realizing that because Danielle Smith schooled him on where Line 5 goes? I think that's the issue. He's been ignoring Alberta and Saskatchewan probably his entire career. And just now, because of the separation threat, he's now deciding to weigh in on it. And of course, weigh in might not be a good term, considering anyway. Yeah, so he's weighing in on this. I don't think we need him to, but whatever. Anybody in our corner is good. I just think that it's very hypocritical of him, especially since he's not really a conservative. He's just a liberal. And I did show you a meme last week. I don't have that meme up on my on my scenes anymore, so I can't bring it up. But he rips off his conservative shirt and he's got a liberal shirt underneath it. I think that really does say quite a bit. Let's go. And I got like 5 clips of Danielle. I don't know if I'll play them all, but they do kind of lead into each other. Let's start with this one and see if we're going to go to it. I know I'm almost at the hour mark. I might go a little bit longer. Why not?
Albertans are more of a actions speak louder than words kind of people. So while I will in good faith work with Prime Minister Mark Carney on unwinding the mountain of destructive legislation and policies that have ravaged our provincial and national economies this past decade, until I see tangible proof of real change, Alberta will be taking steps to better protect ourselves from Ottawa.
I think that's really important. Alberta's taking steps. Now, what those steps are, we've heard a little bit about them. She's going to go into a little bit more detail in some of the other clips that I've got. I think that it's important that she make it very clear, and I would like to see the rest of the Western provinces do the same. She's the best out of all the premiers in Western Canada, in my opinion. Of course, David Eby is nothing but a commie, and he should be in jail due to his connection with the Communist Party of China and everything he's done. He should be in jail for being a drug dealer, for crying out loud. All the people he's got hooked on fentanyl and crack and whatnot with all this safe supply. He should be in jail, in my opinion. He's a drug dealer, he's caused the death of thousands of British Columbians because of what he's done. But that's a little bit of a side rant. The thing is Danielle Smith is putting out this ultimatum, and it's a good one, and it makes a lot of sense. We just have to see if Mark's Carnage Carney is going to live up to it and pay attention. He should. I don't know if he will, but he should. She goes on to, she's actually named this, and it's a good one.
As a start, I will soon appoint a special negotiating team to represent our province in negotiations with the federal government on the following reforms requested by our province. We hope this will result in a binding agreement that Albertans can have confidence in. Call it an Alberta Accord, if you will. First, Alberta requires guaranteed corridor and port access to tidewater off the Pacific, Arctic, and Atlantic coasts for the international export of Alberta oil, gas, critical minerals, and other resources in amounts supported by the free market, rather than by the dictates and whims of Ottawa. Every province in the country, other than Alberta and Saskatchewan, have coastal port access, and no province needs it more given the size and value of our resources. This will benefit all Canadians to the tune of trillions of dollars of economic activity, including billions for First Nations partners.
So she went on to talk about First Nations, and I cut it off there because we will be getting to First Nations in a little bit. But it makes a lot of sense. They have the product that the world wants, and we can't get it to port. They can't get it to port. And there's like tanker bans off the coast of BC, so they can't get their product where it needs to go. I'm not sure the extent of the tanker bans, but and somebody actually told me that it was just just for Alberta oil. I think that's kind of strange. I don't know if that's true, but getting their product to market is huge, and the federal government since in the last 10 years especially, under Trudeau and now Carney, and Carney had been advisor to Trudeau much of that time, they don't want Alberta oil. They don't want Alberta natural gas. They don't want BC natural gas either. They don't want any of that stuff leaving the ground. And of course, that's going to tank our economy. That's going to tank the economy of Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and really, it's going to affect the entire country. And what do we have to do? We send our oil down to the States to be refined. And then they send it back to us a lot of times in a in a form that we could use it. And we're paying for that. Or we send our oil and our natural gas down to the U.S. and they refine it and then they ship it out and they get all the profits from it. This, and we sell it to them at this discount. So, you know, and these are things, Alberta didn't set this up. The provinces didn't set this system up. It was the federal government. The federal government entered into some really bad deals, and we're paying the price for it. So she's got a very good point there. They do need Tidewater to get their product to market, and the federal government has been standing in their way.
Partners. Second, the federal government must end all federal interference in the development of provincial resources by repealing the No New Pipelines Law, C-69, the oil tanker ban, the net zero electricity regulations, the oil and gas emissions cap, the net zero vehicle mandate, and any federal law or regulation that purports to regulate industrial carbon emissions, plastics, or the commercial free speech of energy companies. These laws are destroying investment confidence and costing Canada and Alberta hundreds of billions in investments each year. They need to go. Third.
So she's going to be listing a number of things. She wants to get rid of some laws. I think that there's another law that it's off topic. Maybe it's off topic, but it goes to the rights of Albertans. It goes to the rights of all people in Western Canada. Well, what about insisting that Ottawa repeal the OICs that are taking our property from us? I think that she should go there as well. My personal opinion is she shouldn't stop just at these steps. These are important steps. These are the economic steps. These are the steps that are going to affect everyone, not just gun owners. But, you know, she's talking about the rights of Albertans. This is a serious infringement of our rights, and we have to wonder why. So I'm talking like I am an Albertan. I'm not, but you get the idea. Obviously, our communist premier in BC, he's not going to do anything about it, but something needs to be done about it. They're coming for our guns this year if everything goes as planned, and yeah, she's standing up for our rights. She might as well stand up for all of them, I think. And she's the person to do it.
Their needs. But there is no excuse for such large and powerful economies like Ontario, Quebec, BC, or Alberta to be subsidizing one another. That was never the intent of equalization, and it needs to end. If these points can be agreed to by the federal government, I am convinced it will not only make Alberta and Canada an infinitely stronger and more prosperous country, but will eliminate the doubts a growing number of Albertans feel about the future of Alberta in Canada. While these negotiations with Ottawa are ongoing, our government will appoint, and I will chair, the Alberta Next panel. This panel will be composed of some of our best and brightest judicial, academic, and economic minds to join with me in a series of in-person and online town halls to discuss Alberta's future in Canada, and specifically, what next steps we can take as a province to better protect Alberta from any current or future hostile policies of the federal government. Details.
So she goes on again to talk about hostile actions from the federal government, because really, and we should all be really worried about that. Almost everything they do is hostile to the West, hostile to the citizens of Canada. And she's putting it out there that she wants democracy, direct democracy, and she wants to hear from Canadians. That is not what Liberals want. That is not what the NDP wants. David Eby here in British Columbia, every time you bring that up, and all of a sudden he starts accusing you of being a racist. That's what happened to Dallas Brody in the BC legislature a few days ago. Actually, I did a video on that. He actually called her a racist when she brought that up. All she said was that the only thing, and the racist part, or the part that they said was racist, is that she was talking about all of the land claims of all of the bans that were happening and that were causing a division within BC. I don't see how that's racist at all. That's an observation. And, so just because it has to do with First Nations, Indigenous lands claims, we're not allowed to talk about it now? That's ridiculous, David Eby. Alberta has a premier that is actually sticking up for her citizens and willing to listen to them. And she has said she's not for Alberta separation. Whether or not you believe that, she said it, and she's about to say it once again. And I think that it's worthwhile listening to, because she explains this referendum and what was going to happen with it. And a lot of people are saying that it is all about separating, but it's not. It's a lot more than that.
After the work of the panel is finished, it is likely we will place some of the more popular ideas discussed with the panel to a provincial referendum so that all Albertans can vote on them sometime in 2026. To be clear from the outset, our government will not be putting a vote on separation from Canada on the referendum ballot. However, if there is a successful citizen-led referendum petition that is able to gather the requisite number of signatures requesting such a question to be put on a referendum, our government will respect the democratic process and include that question on the 2026 provincial referendum ballot as well.
So that is the last of my clips from Danielle Smith. And I'm getting close to the end, don't worry. But I think that she made it very clear that the issues brought up before the panel are what is going to go to the referendum. This is called direct democracy. Direct democracy doesn't always work. Direct democracy is a good thing if it's done with reason. Obviously, you don't want mob rule, which is why a lot of people have spoken out against direct democracy and absolute democracy. We don't have a democracy, an absolute democracy in North America here. We've got a constitutional monarchy. We're supposed to have a constitution that protects our rights. But we have been shown by the Liberals over the past, it's more than a decade, because every time they're in power, we get our rights violated. Our constitution doesn't mean anything. So we have this constitution, and it's supposed to protect our rights. It's essentially supposed to tell the government what they're not allowed to do, and the government just ignores them. And she made it very clear here, this referendum that she's going to call in 2026 is not about separating, and she's not going to put that question on the referendum. But if somebody else does, she's going to respect the democratic process, which she should, which all leaders should, and which is one reason why I think that David Eby should be thrown in jail, because he doesn't. But yes, that the will of the people needs to be abided by. But of course, there's groups here that don't agree with that, and here's the one major group that doesn't.
Pack up your bag and go. That's my message to the Premier. You're not welcome here anymore.
Chief Alan Adam fed up with Alberta's Premier and her policies. Those include a move to lower the number of signatures required to start a referendum vote, even one on Alberta separation. That bill, number 54, literally thrown on the ground at a Chiefs press conference in Edmonton on Tuesday.
We're very concerned about the rhetoric around separation, because it fundamentally forgets that we are the rightful owners of this land.
The Grand Chief of Treaty 8 believes Alberta is doing a terrible job of consulting with First Nations on a number of bills.
All Seasons Resorts Act, the regulations that have been changed when it comes to hunting, Bill 54, it doesn't end. And we have concern about where she's getting the ideas for a lot of these bills. Where are they coming from?
Well, she's getting those ideas from concerned citizens who actually have a brain. Now, I'm not saying that these people don't have a brain. And as I've mentioned before, I do have a little bit of Native DNA in me, Indigenous DNA in me from my mother's side. Not enough that it makes a difference, and obviously you can't tell by looking at me. However, what I would like to say here is we got to stop this BS once and for all about having different classes of citizens. Regardless of whether you, like, obviously their culture needs to be maintained. Their culture needs to be protected. But nobody alive today was alive back when the Brits and, well, then eventually early Canadian state signed those treaties. But let's be honest here. Those treaties were not signed because the Brits and then the Canadians that followed wanted to do any favors to the Indigenous population. They wanted to keep them separate. It was a way of not having to deal with them, to separate, to not allowing them to integrate and benefit fully from our society. It was wrong. It was based in bigotry. And it's still wrong today. But the thing is, we're here. We've been here for 400 years or whatever it's been now. And the government is formed. There's plenty of opportunity for Indigenous people to participate in government. And they have every benefit and they have more benefit to succeed in society than anybody else does. That's not right. It should be equal. You can't create equality by creating inequality. Everybody needs to be treated equally. And for the first guy to say, hey, pack your bags and get out, we don't want you here anymore, well, that's maybe you, that's maybe a small portion, and most of the Indigenous population don't necessarily agree with these chiefs. There's a lot that don't. The off-reserve Indigenous population, for the most part, have integrated into our society. Of course, there's people who haven't, and there's plenty who realize that this two-tier society doesn't work, and it needs to be somehow abolished. Yes, their culture needs to be respected, needs to be somehow preserved, but this two-tier system of justice, I don't know if you know this, but when a judge sentences a person in Canada, if they're Indigenous, he has to take into consideration all of that factor and whether or not that he was disadvantaged or, in his past, and that's what caused his crime. So think about this. A person, a lady, an Indigenous lady on a reserve gets hit by her husband or her boyfriend or whatever. And maybe it's more than just a hit. Maybe she's put in the hospital. But that judge then has to take into consideration that the culprit is Native. And I had a case I witnessed this case. It wasn't mine. It happened in Cochrane, Alberta, and I was in Banff at the time, and I was in court when this judge made this decision. This judge decided that he could not sentence a person or could not actually convict a person for domestic assault, a very brutal domestic assault, off of the Cochrane Reserve because there was corruption on the reserve. So he denied the lady who had been the victim, he denied her justice. What part of that makes any sense to anybody? We have a two-tiered justice system in Canada. We have a two-tiered society in Canada that is just wrong, and we need to get rid of it. We need to treat everybody equally. You cannot obtain equal treatment by treating people unequally. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Now, I know that some people are going to push back on that, but it's how I felt for my entire life that you need to treat people equally, and giving anybody a class, making anybody a different class of people, goes against all the principles of Western society. And it's just wrong. So I'm not saying they have to get on board with these referendums, but the referendum isn't just about separation. And this is a democratic process. If you feel like you don't want to participate in that democratic process, or that it doesn't suit you, well, make arguments so that people can either vote your way or vote the other way. But don't just say, hey, you can leave. This is our land. No, it's not your land anymore. It's our land collectively, together. It is the land of the people who occupy Alberta. Okay? That's the way it is. That's the way it should be. None of this two-class system anymore. You were not alive when those treaties were signed. Neither was I. We're all Canadians. That's the way it should be. Now, okay. I think, there's all sorts of different arguments for that. But I tell you what, like, with a very few exceptions, all the treaties have ever done was to oppress the Indigenous population. Think of that. Consider that. But that's just my opinion. I don't know. Hey, you know what? Put your opinion in the comments below. Why not, right? But that's all that's really all I had to say tonight. I didn't go that far over, 20 minutes. I think that last part might be a little bit controversial to some people. I don't know why equality would be, but a lot of people don't believe in equality in Canada. They believe in something else. I believe in equality for all. I believe in equal treatment for all. And we got to get to that. These guys with Treaty 8, Treaty 7, Treaty 6, they have some points. We signed, our ancestors signed a treaty with their ancestors, and to a certain extent, they need to be honored. But that shouldn't keep us from moving forward as a society together, equally. Anyway, some people might just do that, Richard, but I know I'm not, and you know what? People throw that word out all the time. People throw that out. They criticize you when they have nothing else to say, when they can't make a logical argument. They do throw that criticism out. I'm confident that I know I treat everybody well. My wife being a member of a visible minority, technically speaking, and being an immigrant to Canada, and whatnot, I don't think that argument will hold up. But a lot of people will try to make it, I'm sure. But anyway, I'm just going to go back through the comment or the chat and see where it doesn't look like I have any chat from on Rumble. So I'm just going to go to the chat on the YouTube and see what's happening. It only goes back to 6:30. So, yeah. So I don't want to jump in middle of the conversation that you all are having with each other, but so I'm just going to scroll down to something that I know I was talking about. Tracy says hello again from Nanaimo at 6:37. I know that you're already in there. There was another person from Nanaimo I saw did jump into the chat here. John M., how are you? I don't think I acknowledged your presence. May have. Maybe I didn't. Yeah, so we're talking about the 800 ballots. Was it 800 ballots? I'm hoping it wasn't 800 boxes. I think it was ballots, so that's good. Yeah. So Lynn was talking about Spencer from MCGA. I don't know much about that channel. I got to be honest. That was the only video I've ever watched from that channel. We do have to be careful, and I hoped I made it clear at the time that all those were anecdotal, and they're not evidence. They're hearsay because they're not presented to us from the person who experienced it. They're presented to us from Spencer. So to that extent, they're hearsay. They're not admissible in court. And also, anybody can write anything in an email. Having said that, I'm sure that they happened. And they do need to be investigated. So just keep that in mind. Dane Patton, how are you? I think I've said hello to everybody else. Bonnie, I think I did acknowledge Bonnie when she popped in here. One of the regulars. I noticed that there's a few people missing. I'm not sure that hopefully they didn't get kicked off of YouTube again. Oh, that reminds me. I found out how people get kicked off of YouTube more often than not. And one way is if you keep on making the same comment over and over and over again. For some reason, the algorithm thinks that decides that you're a bot and that you're trying to spam the system or something, and they'll kick you out. Now, what happens often is people will make a comment on one of my videos, and I will see it come up twice, but occasionally I'll see it come up 3 times or 4 times or even 5 or 6 times. And I think what's happening is it's taking a while for it to go through and get posted, so people think that it's not being posted. So they hit repost or repost or repost. That might cause some people to get kicked off the channel. The other thing that I think happens is when you link something in a comment, and I just found this out, there apparently, because I know before I was finding a lot of, when I had the time to go and look in the folder, there's 2 folders that are hidden that YouTube has. They have the hide folder that you got to go and search for, and they have the hold folder. And the hide folder is full of comments that have a link in them. And they say that they think that it's because the algorithm recognizes it as possibly offensive, even though it's just a link. So apparently sending links in comments is not a good thing. And I've been guilty of doing that. Not that I wanted to drive anybody to my content, but just letting people know things. Also, trying to drive somebody to your content, apparently, and this is just something I found out this week, YouTube also gets a little bit wigged out about if you're doing it on somebody else's channel. This is just something I heard from, and again, this is actually hearsay as well because it's off of another YouTube channel. Whether it's true or not, it does make sense, especially the putting a link in comments, because I have found when I used to have time to go through those hidden folders, which I don't have time to do anymore, I would find links or comments that had links in them, and that's why apparently they were hidden. Hello, Kathy Drinkle. I don't think I said hello to you before. I think I said hello to everybody else. One thing, deport immigrants from 1999 to now. I don't know if that's going to work, but I get the sentiment of what you're saying. But obviously we can't. Mr. G, I don't think I said hello to Mr. G. She is on the CSIS list. Or the CISI list. I'm not sure what CISI. Did you mean CSIS? CSI? CSIS? Anyway. Or am I just having a dyslexic moment? I don't know. Hello, Alberta 51. Who was spending $50,000 on booze in a month? Was that Dizzy Lizzy? Or was that somebody else? I don't know. It sounds like something Dizzy Lizzy would do. Ford is threatening Trump. Yeah, he was. He's not doing that anymore. He got put in his place. BC Independent Dallas Brody making the case for separation of BC, and she has receipts. I saw some of that. Is there more? Like I saw that in the legislature, Tracy. And when the communist David Eby went all crazy on her, got all stupid on her. Smitty25, how are you doing? Says to jointly absorb all federal duties and abolish the federal government altogether. You know, actually, that might not be a bad idea. I don't know what would come of the Confederation afterwards, but that is a way to go. Annette, how are you today? I live in Ontario and all my family lives in Alberta. Just want them prosperous and happy. So let's leave it up to them. My family wants out of the liberal stronghold and away from the climate BS. I agree totally. You have to leave it up to the people that it affects. It's called self-determination, and that is a right that's guaranteed by not our Constitution, but by the UN. So think of that. Shanky76, is that how you pronounce it? How are you? We should protest. Send a message. Mark Carney at the G7 summit in Alberta and bring the referendum signatures to the world stage. This would just embarrass Mark. His blood would boil once Donald Trump sees it. I think Donald Trump knows what's going on up here. Again, all he's been doing is trolling us. And they wouldn't, because of the way the referendum has to be performed, you couldn't actually have the official the official petition in time for that. But the official petition, I would think once she passes the law, or the act is passed to amend the law, that people will be right on that. Bonnie C, yes, I saw that Ezra went to Bermuda to check out Brookfield's place above the bike shop. I didn't see I saw him, he was doing a report from the airport as he was leaving. I haven't seen the follow-up to that. I should go back and check it out just to see what he has to say. I don't follow Rebel on a regular basis. I do watch their stuff. I'm not a snob against them or anything. But I don't follow them on a regular basis. So I'll check that out. DJ, I think I said hello already. Tracy Lindsay, how are you? So she's saying that the line, I think you're talking about the pipeline is 60 years old and needs to be replaced, but they can't even get that done. Maybe. I don't know about the age of it or the service requirements, or whether the service requirements are being hamstrung by Bill C-69. That would be an interesting question, though. If you find out, let me know. Yeah, Marianne says, shut down the Alberta credit card to Quebec and Ontario. See, Danielle Smith made it very clear. There's no need for transfer payments to either of those two provinces. And both of those provinces get transfer payments. Why? They're both wealthy provinces. Quebec just refuses to become wealthy. They want to suck everything out of the West, but they don't want to play ball with the West. So that's my opinion there. Rennie, Pierre has to win the seat in Alberta as he was treated so vile by those two brothers. God help him as he's working hard in Ontario for us for many years. Yeah, I know that Alberta 51 doesn't want Pierre to win his seat. I don't know why. But he says he's just like Kenny. He's a federal loyalist. You know, all of the federal politicians except for the Bloc Québécois are federal loyalists. That's just the way it is. It doesn't mean he's not going to fight for us. I do hope he wins his seat. He's the Conservatives' best current option. They have a really solid bench of people, and I know a lot of people didn't like Andrew Scheer when he was in. I actually liked him. Maybe he was a bit too pleasant, bit too, for some people's liking, but I liked him. Just going to put that out there. But they have a solid bench. There's a lot of people who could step up. But I do believe that Pierre, he didn't deserve to be treated the way he was treated. I think that it was that there was some underhanded, dirty deals going on there. And yeah, I'm looking forward to him getting back into the House. Not just because I enjoy question period when he's in the House, although I do enjoy question period when he's in the House. We have a second Annette here. How are you today? We need a little more democracy around here. We do. And that's what Danielle Smith is trying to bring to the table. A little bit more democracy with direct democracy. So I hope that happens. The other Annette G says, love Danielle Smith. She has Canadians in mind, not like Carney, who is WEF and carbon tax, and not for Canadians. Wake up, people. We'll become a third world country under Carney. I think we're 3/4 or maybe even 90% of the way there. We are, we've lost a lot in the last 10 years. Pepper, the Frenchie, hadn't seen you in the chat before, but I mean, today, I've seen you before, just not today. How are you? I know Alan Adam, Menace to Society. Alan Adam, I don't know. That's a name I'm going to have to look up. That was one that just blew past me. I don't know why. But I'll look him up. Why not? I know that there's somebody here who wants the PPC to win. And my opinion is that the PPC, they don't have enough. They're not ever going to win a seat. All they're really doing is I liked Max Bernier when he ran for party leader. But I didn't know him that well. I just liked a lot of his policies, and I voted for him. But he lost my support when he decided to, leave the schoolyard, take his ball, and go home. Basically, is the impression I got when he decided to just form his own party because he lost. And I never really heard from him a really good explanation. He was further right than anybody else, but he lost my support, and since he's kind of the dictator of that party for life, I don't know that it's something that we should really, or that I could really get behind. Ariel Sky, how are you today? Anyways, I don't mean to upset anybody, but that's just my opinion on on Maxime Bernier. Nothing against him personally. I don't know him personally. I did vote for him, but I wouldn't vote for him ever again because of that. And yeah. So Smitty said, I'm done. The Westminster model is why Canada is broken. Very easily compromised. Well, we've seen that, haven't we? Exactly what model would be better, I don't know. Would a constitutional republic be better? Would a parliamentary republic be better? I don't know. I think a congressional republic might be better. Eric Johnson, first time I've seen your name here tonight. Carney is WEF. We are finished as a country at this point. I want Alberta and BC and Saskatchewan to separate at this point. It is sad to say, but the government has been taken over. I think so as well. Yeah, I think that we're all caught up. That was a very long rant from me tonight. So Ariel here. This is something I've been wanting to mention for a while. This elbows up crap. Never understood it. Never understood why people got behind it. It's a dirty move in hockey. What are the Liberals thinking? How is that? It's almost like Carney dancing and singing, I cheated to get what I got, whatever that song is. This is dirty pool. Yeah, that old elbows up crap. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But yeah, I keep on forgetting to mention that. Anyways, thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. It's been an extra long one. I had a whole bunch of stuff. Maybe this method of clipping isn't all that great because it brings too many clips into it. I don't know. Let me know. Did you enjoy tonight? Was it okay? Did I have too much stuff or not enough stuff? Did I go off topic and did I rant too much? Let me know. I'm okay. As long as people are polite, they can criticize all they want as long as they do it in a polite manner and they don't get all abusive to the other commenters. I hate that when people just start going off on, there's always that troll, that liberal troll. Maybe it's a bot because there are some bots and there are some trolls who get a hold of my content and they get in there. And I hate it when they start attacking the people in the comments, the other people in the comments, just to be abusive. So anyway, that's another one of my rants. Just be nice to each other and everything will be fine. And that's a problem that we have, I think, a lot with, people within our, I guess, society is they just start getting abusive because they're behind this wall. They're behind the keyboard. Obviously, I'm in front now, but when I was totally behind, the screen and not seen, I only ever made one negative comment on a video, and I did it in a polite way. I just expressed my opinion. So why be abusive to one another? Treat everybody nice. Everybody should be good. Well, that's all I got. Have a great weekend coming up. I guess I should put this podcast or this live stream on Fridays if I'm going to say have a great weekend, but it's close enough to the weekend. Have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your week. See you next week. I have to stop saying see you next Thursday. It just comes out as habit, but I will see you next week on the live stream with your comments. I hope you guys prosper, and maybe we should start a petition to get Danielle Smith to also help us out with our constitutional rights for guns all across Canada, not just in Alberta. But anyway, that's all I've got again. So we'll see you later. Take care. God bless. And treat each other kindly.
You've been watching the Northwest Cavalryman Show. Thank you for tuning in this evening. I hope you've enjoyed the content. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and share with your friends and on social media. May God bless you. And if you're a Liberal crybaby, bless your heart. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Thursday.